Meghan Markle's royal image may be facing its most dangerous moment, yet not because of a headline, not because of a palace leak, but because of a trail of contradictions that some royal watchers believe could hand Prince William exactly what he needs when he finally takes the throne. What began as a simple denial about a title suddenly exploded into a tangled web of conflicting statements, commercial branding, legal questions, and an uncomfortable silence from the very people who could shut down the speculation instantly. And the deeper you dig, the more it feels like a story that has been hiding in plain sight all along.
In this case, we're not dealing with the smartest person in the world. We know that from all the things we've seen. Seriously, she's not.
Yeah.
She's nice and she's smart. And she can get along in the world by herself.
Secrets and criticising everyone in the family because they, of course, were these sort of noble people who'd fled the royal system and were trying to do good in the world. And the problem is they've had 11 PR advisors, as you say, in 5 years. That very much hints at chaos within.
Everything seemed ordinary at first, just another royal controversy drifting through the endless cycle of headlines. But then something happened that made people stop and look twice. In April 2025, Meghan's own representatives issued what appeared to be a crystal clear public statement. No ambiguity, no carefully crafted palace language, no room for interpretation. The message delivered to major media outlets was simple. The Sussexes do not use her titles. It sounded definitive. It sounded final. It sounded like the conversation was over before it even started. Except it wasn't, because almost immediately the narrative began unraveling. Within just 24 hours, another voice connected to the same Sussex operation reportedly offered a completely different explanation. Suddenly, the story wasn't that the title wasn't being used. The story became that it was being used, just not commercially.
Markle is allegedly very worried that Prince William could move to strip her of her Duchess of Sussex title when he becomes monarch. If I was Meghan, I'd be pretty worried too, because she's still happy to use the Duchess of Sussex title.
Absolutely.
I mean, she uses it on her website. She tries to sell her candles and her
One statement, then another. Same camp, same issue, completely different message. And that is where the alarm bells started ringing. Royal controversies rarely explode because of one dramatic moment. They grow because of contradictions. Tiny cracks that widen until the entire structure begins shaking. Observers started asking an uncomfortable question. If the title truly wasn't being used, why was there a need to explain how it was being used only a day later? Then came the detail that turned a confusing story into something much bigger. While the public debate was unfolding, Meghan's lifestyle brand was operating in full view. Products were being promoted. Marketing was active. The business was presenting itself to consumers. And according to critics, references to Meghan as Duchess of Sussex appeared prominently within the brand's presentation. Suddenly, the argument wasn't about a private gift basket or a personal gesture anymore. It was about a commercial enterprise attached to a title connected to the monarchy.
I mean, Meghan is an agent of poison. She actually is able to destroy relationships. And when she cultivates relationships, it's always for her own good, her own purpose.
But she's ruthless. She thought, this is good for me, and is good for the business.
The timing felt explosive. One side insisted the title wasn't being commercially exploited. The other side pointed directly at branding materials and asked viewers to judge for themselves. But this wasn't the only development attracting attention. At almost the same moment, Prince William was making headlines for a completely different reason. During a lengthy public interview, he spoke openly about family life, his children, personal struggles, memories of the late Queen, and even everyday moments that made him relatable to millions. Yet one thing stood out. Certain names never appeared. Silence. And in royal circles, silence often speaks louder than words. The absence became part of the story itself. Commentators began dissecting what wasn't said rather than what was. Why avoid mentioning Harry? Why avoid Meghan? Was it simply caution? Or was it evidence of a divide so deep that even casual acknowledgement had become impossible? Nobody could answer with certainty. But then another development landed like a thunderbolt. On March 26, 2026, author Tom Bower released a book that reignited speculation about the future relationship between William and the Sussexes. Bower was not viewed by supporters as a casual commentator. His reputation was built on investigations, controversy, and claims backed by extensive sourcing. Whether readers agreed with him or not, his work always generated attention. This time was no different. One statement in particular sent shockwaves through royal discussions. Sources connected to royal circles reportedly suggested that when William eventually becomes king, he may be far less forgiving than many expect. The language was dramatic. The implications were enormous. Suddenly, conversations about titles were no longer hypothetical internet debates. They were being linked to potential future actions by a future monarch. And that changed everything. Because this was no longer just about Meghan. This was about power, real power, the kind that determines who keeps status, who loses status, and who controls the future narrative of the monarchy. Meanwhile, another layer of the puzzle emerged. Journalists began revisiting earlier reports discussing possible legal pathways available to a future king. Articles detailed mechanisms that could theoretically be used to alter titles and royal privileges. Importantly, these discussions weren't appearing in obscure corners of the internet. They were being published by established royal correspondents with years of experience covering palace affairs. Again, no official denials arrived. Again, silence became part of the story. As these debates intensified, attention shifted toward money, because money often reveals what public relations attempts to conceal. According to claims discussed by commentators and biographers, the Sussex lifestyle requires substantial financial resources, large properties, security costs, media projects, business ventures, travel obligations. Everything carries a price tag. Critics argued that revenue streams appeared less stable than before. Streaming deals no longer generated the same excitement. New projects struggled to replicate earlier successes. Viewership numbers became ammunition in a growing argument about influence and relevance. The comparison that kept resurfacing was impossible to ignore. When Harry and Meghan's documentary launched, global attention was enormous. The world was captivated by royal conflict. Millions watched. Headlines dominated international media. Years later, lifestyle-focused projects generated significantly less excitement. For critics, this difference proved something important. They argued audiences weren't necessarily interested in Meghan the entrepreneur. They were interested in Meghan the Duchess. And that distinction may be the most important clue in the entire story, because if the commercial value comes primarily from the royal connection, then the future of that connection becomes more than a personal matter. It becomes a business matter, a branding matter, a financial matter, a survival matter. That realization is what makes the current situation feel different from previous controversies. This isn't merely about family drama anymore. It's about a title linked to identity, a title linked to influence, a title linked to commercial value, and according to growing speculation, a title ultimately controlled by an institution that Meghan herself no longer represents officially. The deeper observers looked, the stranger the pattern appeared. Contradictory statements, public silence, explosive books, legal discussions, falling ratings, branding debates. Each development alone might have faded away. Together, they created something harder to dismiss, a narrative. A narrative suggesting that behind every headline lies a much bigger battle still waiting to happen. And perhaps the most fascinating part of all is that nobody involved seems eager to settle the argument once and for all. The contradictions remain. The questions remain. The speculation remains. Most importantly, Prince William remains exactly where he has always been waiting for the moment when speculation becomes authority, waiting for the moment when opinions become decisions, waiting for the moment when he no longer needs advisors, commentators, biographers, or anonymous sources speaking on his behalf. Because if royal watchers are correct, the real story has never been about what Meghan is doing today. What makes this story so explosive is that the closer you get to the center of it, the less it looks like a simple dispute over titles and the more it starts resembling a countdown. Not a countdown measured in days or months, but a countdown measured in royal succession. Because every road in this controversy eventually leads back to one unavoidable fact: William is not king yet, and that single detail may be the only reason the final chapter hasn't already been written. For years, the public has been encouraged to view the feud between William and Harry as a family disagreement, an emotional rupture between two brothers whose lives were shaped by tragedy. But according to royal commentators, the conflict has evolved into something much larger than hurt feelings or private resentment. It has become a battle over reputation, authority, and the future image of the monarchy itself. Every interview, every documentary, every public statement, every business launch has added another layer to that battle. The deeper the divide became, the harder it became to imagine any path back. And yet, what truly fascinates observers is not what William says. It is what he refuses to say. Think about the pattern. During public appearances, interviews, and major media moments, William has demonstrated that he can speak openly about almost every aspect of his life. He talks about his family. He talks about his children. He talks about challenges. He talks about his late grandmother and the lessons she taught him. But when the conversation approaches Harry and Meghan, a wall appears. A cold controlled, deliberate silence, the kind of silence that leaves commentators scrambling to interpret what isn't being said. Some see that silence as maturity, others see it as strategy. But either way, it creates an atmosphere that fuels speculation. Then there is the Andrew precedent, a development many people overlooked at the time. When changes were made regarding Prince Andrew's royal status, the process demonstrated something important. The monarchy possesses mechanisms for handling situations involving titles and royal privileges. Suddenly, conversations that once sounded impossible no longer seemed quite so impossible. The debate shifted from could it happen to would it happen. That distinction matters, because once people begin believing something is possible, every new controversy starts being viewed through that lens, and controversy keeps arriving. The title debate, the branding debate, the business debate, the media debate, the family debate. One by one, they stack on top of each other until they create a picture that feels impossible to ignore. Critics argue that Meghan's commercial success remains deeply connected to royal status. Supporters argue that she has built an independent platform beyond palace walls. Both sides continue fighting the same battle years after the royal exit. But beneath those arguments lies a far more uncomfortable reality. Time is the one opponent nobody can negotiate with. Every year that passes moves William closer to the moment when speculation becomes authority. Every year that passes increases scrutiny on decisions made by both camps. Every year that passes raises the stakes surrounding titles, branding, and royal identity. That is why the contradictions discussed throughout this story have become so important. Critics believe they create a documented trail that could one day be used as evidence of a broader pattern. Whether that belief proves correct is another matter entirely, but the existence of that perception alone has transformed what might have been a temporary controversy into a long-term question hanging over the Sussex brand. And perhaps that is the greatest irony of all. The very title that helped attract global attention may also be the source of the greatest vulnerability. Because if audiences were originally drawn to the story because of the royal connection, then any threat to that connection automatically becomes a threat to the narrative itself. Every documentary, every interview, every product launch, every headline eventually circles back to the same central question. What happens if the title disappears? That question lingers over everything. Meanwhile, somewhere behind palace gates, official silence continues. No dramatic announcements, no public declarations, no final verdicts, just patience. And patience can be dangerous, because while the public argues, while commentators debate, while biographers publish books and analysts dissect every detail, the clock keeps moving forward. The future king keeps getting closer to the throne. The legal discussions keep resurfacing. The questions keep multiplying, which brings us to the most unsettling possibility of all. Maybe the biggest story isn't happening right now. Maybe everything we've seen so far is merely the buildup, the contradictions, the statements, the interviews, the books, the ratings, the branding controversies. They may not be the climax at all. They may simply be the evidence people look back on later when trying to understand how the situation reached its breaking point. And if that day ever comes, royal watchers may remember this period not as the moment the battle started, but as the moment the outcome quietly began taking shape behind the scenes. Because in royal history, the most consequential moves are rarely the loudest ones. Sometimes they're the decisions made in silence. And right now, silence may be the loudest thing of all.